Alright, you guys, so that is the first portion of this video where we're sculpting this amazing I Lava You wall plate. Now, of course, we don't have the cutout inserts in this yet, as well as any of the actual screw attachments to attach it to the metal wall plate for the wall itself. So let's go ahead and jump into a voiceover here, guys, and let's go ahead and begin putting the screws as well as the actual ports for the light switch attachments onto this beautiful artistry made, sculpted I Lava You wall plate. Now, this is a very fun project, and as you can see here, I'm just kind of tinkering and kind of showcasing the actual fin for the whale. So there's a whale popping up out of the water right there, and there's another smaller whale beside it, but those fins kind of come out and away from the whale's body. And I just want to showcase that that is going to be attached later on after I get this all finished up with some glue. I didn't want to risk that breaking off. So here we are with the metal wall plate. We also have that tin foil backer that we had placed over the metal wall plate before we actually begin our sculpting process. Now, if you haven't had the opportunity to see that video, I will link the entire playlist at the very end of this video so you can see that in its entirety. Just remember that you can use the playback button throughout the YouTube settings to increase the speed even more so other than the time lapse I have it set to. Now, this item has already been baked in the oven at 275 for around 15 minutes, and that wall plate is not warped or bent in any way. So it's going to hold out very well when we make more different types of wall plates in the near future. We're going to go ahead and begin this process by going ahead and peeling off this aluminum foil. We don't need that anymore, but it did serve its purpose. And it didn't have a completely smooth background on the back of the sculpted item. If I had printed off or rolled out a large sheet of clay and then applied that in one fell swoop, then it wouldn't have those kind of blended edges. I'm not really worried about that in any way. When I apply resin to this, it's gonna just intensify the overall strength. So I did sculpt this around the original wall plate. It's just going to give it a little bit extra strength. And then this just is going to attach onto the actual light switch attachments just like it is now. So what we're going to do here is, the reason I used a metal wall plate here is I'm actually going to use this as a means to cut out, or use it as a stencil to cut out the holes for the light switches as well as the holes for the screws. I'm going to go ahead and get a metal pan here, just out of the studio here, off to the side. And I'm kind of propping this up mostly so that I don't break the whale's fin. I could have made both of the fins detachable, but that one is actually blended into the outside edge of the body of the whale, so I couldn't attach it later. So here we are, just kind of having it leaned up, and when I get my my Dremel tool out, as well as some of the bits that I'm going to use to drill these holes and kind of router out the edges of the wall plate switch, I will hold this in my hand. So we're going to go ahead and drill these out as we go in a time lapse here. Most of this is in 2x speed. Sometimes I'll go into a 6x speed if I'm just kind of expediting hooking on a new bit or something. Remember to make sure you wear gloves and eyewear when you're doing this. Some safety glasses is always a beneficial thing, and you'll see why here shortly. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this out for just a smaller gauge. I thought that other bit was just a little bit too large to go through the holes of the metal wall plate there. I ended up flipping up that metal pan, and we're just going to catch as much of this dust as we can. Now, it does cut through this clay very easily here. Make sure you wear safety glasses, and this is why. Oh, boom. Yeah, my actual bit broke. So the outside edge of the bit made contact with the metal wall plate there, and it just bent it at the wrong angle, and it clipped it off, so it broke it. It did not damage my clay in any way, but just imagine that thing like shooting off across the studio and hitting you in the eye. That's why you wear safety glasses when you do things like this. So it didn't work out with that bit, and I kind of just had to toss that one away. And we're going to go ahead and get a different size here. I actually have to go back up to the large size again. And then here in a few moments, I actually try to use an actual drill bit from an actual drill. It's a longer shank, and I've never really used it in a Dremel tool, but it worked out quite well. It is a smaller gauge as well. So here we are. You can see I'm just going to go ahead and just cut out using the metal as kind of the routing edge. I'm going to use this as a means just to cut out a almost perfectly square hole in the wall plate there. So just remember that when you sculpt something like this, you just don't know how the holes are going to come out. My hope was that the holes for this would not come out just straight up in the middle of their faces of the I Lava You volcanoes, and it worked out quite well. So I was very lucky in that aspect. But in the future, when I do make more of these 3D wall plates for the household, or eventually make some to sell possibly, I need to remember to have that in hindsight of where those little ports are open, so that I don't kind of sculpt something very important right there where those light switches are going to come out. And that it goes for the actual screw holes as well. So as we go through this process, you'll kind of see that I decided to set that off to the side, and I'm like, well, let me go ahead and use the hand drill. These hand drills are just too much work, not worth the effort. And that clay is actually pretty durable, so I'm actually having trouble getting through that with that little hand screw drill bit. So we're gonna go ahead and go to a longer bit here, and this is the one that came with my, or I got for my actual drill itself, not just the router tool. So we're gonna finish up with the Dremel there. I just really like the idea of actually sharing some Dremel work. I don't get to very often use the Dremel in my art, so it's very fun when I'm able to do so. It's just really cool, and the Dremel makes quick work of this. So here when I'm using that same long shanked bit there, and I'm actually going to cut at a slight angle here, so that way as the light switch goes up and down vertically in the toggling motion, you know, like a light switch does on and off, then it doesn't have the opportunity to hit any of the clay there. It could possibly break the epoxy layer later on down the road, or it just makes it hard for the kids to get their hands onto the actual light switch. And I don't want the kids to have to really shove their fingers in between the clay pieces just to get a hold of the light switch to flip it up and down. So I want to make sure that the actual switch is accessible easily to little fingers, if that makes any sense. So you'll see at the very end of the video when I kind of like put it up against the wall, and I kind of just do it like a dry fit to make sure that the screws and everything fit properly the way that I'd like for them to. So really just doing a little bit of cleanup work here, trying to make sure that these are smoothed off, make sure that the right angles are a little bit proper. And I do use a little bit of the X-Acto knife just in those right angle corners, just to make sure I get a nice clean sharp edge in the corners. If it has a little bit of roughness to the outside edges of the light switch ports, then I'm completely okay with that. So I'm going to kind of just waller out the screw holes just a little bit, so I don't have to fight to get those screws into position. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of create a countersink so that the screw heads are a little bit recessed into the clay. They don't have to be completely gone. There's no point in having that, like, you know, that recessed screw into the clay, but I just want to make sure that it has enough of a seat there that the actual head of the screw is just not super prominent and sticking out. So I do put a ball grinding tool on the end of my Dremel here, and we're going to go ahead and bore that out at least just a little bit here. And it's actually not enough. It's enough to like initially get the kind of outside edges of the holes kind of drilled out a little bit. But then I actually, when I put it on the wall, I actually use the X-Acto knife and just kind of carve out the little bowl where the actual head of the screw is going to fit out. So I actually do quite a bit of carving away. And then when I get done with the actual countersink of the heads of the screws here, what I will do is I will also kind of carve the outside edges of the female volcano's hair and a little bit of his face right there, so that it makes it look like the screws aren't really just sticking out too much. It'll make sense more so in the painting video and later on when I epoxy it. Here you can see that the light switches are easily accessible to the children. They're easy to get a hold of, and that's why we do a dry fit, to make sure I don't need to cut out any more of that clay before it's ready to be painted here. See, the screws are just kind of slightly inset there. That's pretty good, you guys. Again, I don't get to use the Dremel very often in any of my videos. Usually it's more so the heavy-duty kind of like dioramas that I get to. So I do hope you guys enjoyed this highlight clip. Make sure you click the playlist here listed in a moment, and you'll be able to see the entirety of this I Lava You wall plate. I'll catch you guys on the next one.